Good evening, ladies and gents. This is the Elbows Down MotoGP podcast. This is the Brazilian Grand Prix review. I'm joined by Keelin as always. How are you, mate?
Jim, great to be back as always. We have a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, that was an eventful weekend. I am sat here, sorry, of course, with the replacement mic, folks. Yeah, tech issues or forgetting mics issues. But as long as you can hear me, folks, and hear Keelan, who cares, right? But yeah, good to be back. I couldn't wait for that race meeting. I really couldn't. And it delivered entertainment. If we'll get to everything else, but it did deliver in more ways than one. What looked like an unprepared track in the end. But we'll get into the action before we get into what a lot of people are probably thinking about, which is the disappointment of the degradation and what the rain did to the ground and all that jazz. We'll get to that, folks. We will get to it. But first off, I want to go into the track action, Keelan. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Bez, 4 wins on the trot, which isn't something we always do is include last year, but it's still 4 wins in the trot. Predictions wise, we were all over the place last week. The one thing I did get right was that Aprilia would be there. It would be one of their tracks. So we saw Bez pretty seamless in that race. Once he was up front, I knew he was going to win. Did you think the same? Once he got in that zone, that was it? Or did you think Marc would maybe come back through? Because Marc never actually came back through, did he?
No, so this is what's so interesting, apart from obviously the stuff that we will get into later about the track itself. In terms of the actual performance on Sunday, I thought Marco Bezzecchi was absolutely outstanding. Thought he was the best rider on the grid by a considerable distance. And I'm glad you pointed out the Marquez thing because, like everybody, when Marquez is in second, you normally start hearing the Jaws music and he normally starts gaining and gaining and gaining. But weirdly, I never got the feeling he was going to catch Bezzecchi, which isn't something that's ever happened before. Even in the previous races that Bezzecchi's won, and like you said, it's 4 in the bounce now. Even with the previous 3, I always had the feeling that Marc might have the ability to catch Bez and gain on him and take the win away from him. But on Sunday, I never had that sort of feeling at any point. Bez looked he almost looked a lot like Jorge Lorenzo, where he got when he got in front, he was never going to relinquish the lead again. So incredibly impressive from Bezzecchi. It's one of his most complete performances that I've seen in MotoGP. It's definitely right up there with the best. And if he can replicate those kind of performances throughout the season, then he has got a serious chance at this championship because that was something else.
No, I think that's a fair comment about the championship. And the same with his performance, one of his best ever in MotoGP.
Outstanding, absolutely
Yeah,
outstanding.
it was, yeah. And this is a bit of a worrying thing for Marc. Yes, I still think he's the favourite for the championship. But if you let Bears get in the lead now, he's got an incredible ability now to stick into a rhythm, which reminds us of many riders, many greats in the past that have been able to do such a thing. Jorge Lorenzo comes into mind, and he can control Marc as well. You know, when you're at a point where you can control the lead, and that's obviously something that we know he knows he can do in his head. He can control the lead now, and he knew that if he got a good start, he could control the race. Yes, we're going to go to other tracks coming up soon that aren't necessarily Aprilia track. Well, Jerez might be. The new Aprilia is slightly different. Every year they're a little bit different. Coaster, I think, will write off because I still think Marc will win that race, but
Agreed.
it's looking good. It's looking good for Aprilia fans. And yeah, they had mass control there. Having Martin, I know Martin in the race got a bit of a free overtake when obviously you saw Digi and Marc, and Martin was only too happy to invite himself underneath, and that he kept it really. But I do think he'd have got there anyway. Truthfully, I think Martin would have got there, and just shows the superiority of the factory Aprilias at the track. But then again, when you look at the order here, Keelan, you've got Aprilia first, second, fifth, and 10th. That's all 4 Aprilias in the top 10 in this modern era of MotoGP, where every manufacturer now is good. Apart from Yamaha, I've reset a bit with a new V4. Every manufacturer has more or less a good bike now at certain areas, at certain strengths, or a rider that's good on one bike. Like Fabio can do well on Yamaha, Pedro can do well on the KTM. To get 4 Aprilias in the top 10 is very, very impressive. So yeah, I think they're leading the manufacturers championship now, and they have 2 less bikes than Ducati. So yeah, hats off to Aprilia, hats off to Bez. Just sublime, absolutely sublime ride. Wasn't I didn't actually feel. Sometimes you see these races and you think, well, that was actually a bit boring, but I didn't really feel it. Maybe it was because I was so happy that this is going to mix everything up for the rest of the year. That you think, actually, no, I want this to happen. I want Mark to finish fourth because this is going to make it interesting as the season goes along. So I wasn't too fussed that it wasn't the most entertaining race. The sprint was actually quite good, wasn't it, Keelan? I mean, that was a good battle between Digi. Did you think? I mean, obviously, Digi did beat Mark fair and square in the race. We know that. We saw that. It surprised all of us that Mark had nothing back. Very surprised, actually. In the sprint, did you think with obviously you don't get as many points for grabs at the sprint? Did you think? Because I did. The only person that I could feel would be aggressive and want it enough to pass Mark back on that last lap of the sprint, when Digi was close enough. I feel like the only person on the current grid that would risk a crash to win the sprint would have been Pedro Costa.
I don't think Pedro's the only one, but I think Pedro's the most obvious one, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I think you're very right to point that out. I think it's a very fair comment, but I actually think, and this is going a long way back, folks, so do stick with me. I think if you go back to like 2019 in Sepang with Fabio Quartararo and Mark, you saw that Fabio would be willing to push that and take the risk. So
Yeah.
I think Fabio's a rider that absolutely would have risked it to win. I think Pedro's already shown this year alone he's willing to risk it to win. And I'm trying to think who else would be. I think maybe Bezzecchi would be willing to risk it to win if it really came down to it as well. But they're the only
Even
three
in the
I can
sprint,
think of. Yeah,
even in the sprint. Yeah, you did.
I think even in sprint, because I think Bezzecchi realizes maybe this year compared to last year, every point is so
Yeah, that's
valuable.
fair.
When you're up against Marc Marquez of all people, every single championship point is gold dust, and you have got to get as many of them as you can. So I think Bezzecchi would absolutely risk it to win it all. I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, it sometimes just feel it's also hard to depict what's happening because Mac's so good on the brakes. Still, I would say him and Toprak are probably the strongest breakers in the world as we speak. And we'll get to Toprak in a minute, Toprak fans, because he had a good weekend. He had a good start to the weekend. It was always going to get harder, which is out of his hands, frankly. But yeah, again, we'll stop talking about Aprilia because we've got an awful lot of listed stuff here today, folks. Yeah, it's looking good for them. Looking really good. And I know everyone says, "Oh, wait till we get after Jerez." Well, we keep saying that, but you're not going to discount the first three Grand Prix. They still count the same points, the same, and they going to be going to these tracks every year now. So yeah, these early points matter. Yes, we know more maybe by the time we get to these European races. But we go to these races, these tracks once a year, these European races. We go to these other tracks once a year. So I've never really fully understood why people insist on saying these things. Um, but yeah, there we are. Especially when we
I
test in that last.
actually I would actually
Go on, sorry.
argue just quickly before we move on that very point. People who say, "Oh, wait till we get to Jerez, or wait till we get to Coda, or wait till we get to the Saxon Ring, or wherever." If anything, this past weekend should be more of a marker than going to Jerez or the Saxon Ring or wherever else, because this past weekend was the ultimate equalizer, and Aprilia proved they have the best package on the grid. So if anything, you should be paying more attention to this past weekend than you should to a Jerez or somewhere else, in my opinion, because Aprilia have proved that when it's a completely even fight, they're maybe the strongest weapon on the paddock.
Yeah. No, I think it is. Truthfully. Speaking of good levelers, mate, we've got that showing again in Yamaha's talent with and yes, I know it's a new track, and you know it was wet on Friday, but you obviously it was dry in places, and you can take risks and gain and have massive rewards or massive high sides. And Toprak got into P3, I think it was, on Friday afternoon, and Fabio went straight to Q2 as well. So it was really, really strange seeing two V4 Yamahas in Q2 straight to Q2. And it paid off for Fabio, who had an amazing start to the sprint. I was like, what are you doing in P3? You are not allowed to be there. What are you doing? You weren't invited. Brilliant. Absolutely outstanding. Yeah, he got chipped away, and obviously, as it just gets warmer and warmer, and the track was already dry. So yeah, he gets eaten up by Aprilias, eaten up by KTM's, eaten up by Ducatis. So, but hats off, he really, really does put it on the line again. Fabio Quartararo, brings a knife to a gunfight and still manages to embarrass a few people with decent pistols. It is incredible what he does. In time, we might see Toprak do something similar as he's getting used to the bike. Maybe Jack as well. Jack sometimes comes out of nowhere and shines well. With Alex Rins, he's still struggling, but again, he didn't do it too badly early on in the weekend. But this is the thing with underpowered motorcycles on a track that's very tight, very short. Yes, it's a long enough straight, but it was always going to be a leveler to a degree. So I think they'll really struggle, Yamaha's though in Kota. Really, I think they're really going to struggle. That's going to really expose them. Maybe by Jerez we'll see some new engines for them. Fingers crossed, because those 4 riders are better than their results, and we all know that, if we're brutally honest. Anything else you want to add to Yamaha before we move on?
Yeah, I think we mentioned this, or I mentioned this on the last episode of the episode before. I still maintain Fabio Quartararo is the most talented rider in the MotoGP paddock outside of Marc Marquez. I've stood on that, and I continue to stand on that. Anybody who can win a MotoGP World Championship on a Yamaha is automatically up there, in my opinion. And the fact that Fabio managed to do it in 2021 is still nothing short of a miracle to me. So there's always that. But
You
I
think?
think
Do you
we,
not think then it was easier to? Well, not easier. Do you not think there was the Ducati wasn't at its level just by that point? Not that's
I'm
not them taking it away from Fabio, but do you not think the Ducati was not quite there?
I don't know. I still think Fabio, I don't know, just with the mindset and with the talent and with the package that was under him, I still think he was going to do it because I just think he's that good of a rider. Bringing it sort of to Sunday's events and Saturday's events, of course, what you saw is what talent looks like. Anybody, and I include obviously Top Rack in this as well, anybody who can pull that off on that shopping cart of a MotoGP bike is worthy of admiration because he was up there battling where he did not belong. And yes, on the streets, he was getting eaten up by Ducati and Aprilia and Ducati and Aprilia. But Fabio Quartararo is the only reason, in my opinion, that Yamaha is still even half competing and half relevant. If he wasn't there, I dread to imagine what Yamaha would look like because they would be nowhere.
Yeah, yeah. No, when you say it like that, you'd have P15s or P12s is the highest result right now at best. Yeah, Yamaha management praying for a wet race or something
Yeah,
like that.
doing
So
the
yeah, no,
doing Yamaha management doing the rain dance every single round.
yeah, yeah. Moving on from more bad weekends, we haven't now seen the factory Lenovo Ducati team win a race since the Japanese Grand Prix last year, and that was Pecco. Pecco Bagnaia was the last person to win a race for that team, which is nuts. If you went to your motorsport enthusiasts down the street, say who won the last race for Ducati? Marquez. Of course, it wasn't. No, it's really, really weird. Um, do you think that's going to change soon? We know it will because Mark is Mark. Pecco, though, crashing again. Is his headspace the same as last year, or is it a bit of that? And is he just giving up? Like, well, I've signed with Aprilia, so I'm going through the motions. What do you think?
Yeah, I just think, and it's very, very sad to see because I really do love Pecco Bagnaia as a
Yeah,
rider. I just think he's done now with Ducati, obviously. I just think he's at a point where, do you know what? I've been broken by Mark. I'm not the golden boy anymore. I just can't do this anymore. I don't know what more I can do. And I just hope for him, if it is the Aprilia move, I just hope it really revives and revitalizes him because he just looks miserable every single weekend. And what's making it worse is he has arguably the best package in the grid. I don't think it is, but people would argue that the Ducati's the best bike in the grid. And he's thinking to himself, why am I not performing and why am I not doing better? And I just think he's run out of road and run out of answers. That's pretty much all I can say.
so the thing is now he's riding the same bike, arguably, as Fabio Di Gianantonio,
Yeah.
who was one of the stars of the weekend, truthfully. And Mark's Mark, but I don't get it. I really don't understand. He's been gifted what he wanted. He's got the feel back. He said he had what he wanted in the Sepang test. Okay, he said it's what I like now. I feel good. And then when it really matters in the first 2 races, I should say, it's just he's not performing.
Yeah.
But it still wouldn't surprise me if this continues, right? And then you get out of nowhere, no one could touch him in Magellan.
Yeah.
Um, I would bet money that could that would be a good bet, folks. That would be a good bet.
I
You know,
just think with Pecco, I think Pecco's biggest problem is, and this is in no way a slight towards him, because like I said, I am genuinely a big fan of Pecco Bagnaia. I think the problem is he's never had to ride other machinery and learn to ride around problems. When he's been on the Ducati, the problems have always been fixed for him. Whereas whether you love Marc Marquez or you hate Marc Marquez, Mark has always had the ability to ride around major problems with the bike that he's riding, and his talent has always bridged the gap between the problems and winning. And I just think the problem is with Pecco, I don't think he knows what's good anymore and what isn't, because I don't think he can ride around the problems with the bike, whereas Marc Marquez can. And I think this was always going to be the problem for Pecco when Mark joined the team. There was always that risk of him getting shown up if something went wrong, and that's exactly what's happened. So I think if it is the Aprilia move, it's going to be a really good fresh start for Pecco, because I just don't think he has anything left for Ducati.
I think we can all evidently see that he's struggling, but what we can't see or hear is conversations behind closed doors. Which could, no one will ever know that. There'll be. I bet there's thousands of things that would shock all of us. Conversations throughout the paddock in the last 50 years that we'd be like, what? Really? That happened? Oh, that explains that. I bet there's thousands of stories. And I believe one of those things might be happening to Pecco now with the fallout with management. I can't believe it, folks. Truthfully, I cannot believe that their golden boy is leaving after 1 year of Mark being his teammate. I still thought he'd be there. I still thought they'd look after him. And even though they had it was very likely that Mark would beat him anyway. They would obviously have taken someone supremely mentally strong to be able to still win the odd race and still be attractive to Ducati. I mean, Pedro, Danny Pedrosa would manage to stay teammate to Mark for an awful long time, even though Mark won the title on his first attempt. And Danny was Mr. Runner-up, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, for so many times. And Mark turns up, wins the title on his first attempt. The Honda kept Danny on for ages because he would still win races every year. If Mark wasn't there, Danny would take the win. Um, and Danny was okay with that. There was I don't think there was any special treatment. I think potentially that's what DG wanted from Mark and Pecco, even though Pecco had already won 2 titles. But it's just not worked out. Whether it's mentally too weak to withstand what's going on. Maybe he knew months and months and months ago that Pedro Costa was going to take his job. No idea. We don't know when that was actually confirmed, do we? It's not confirmed, but we don't know when. We know it's happening, but we don't know when that was confirmed. So maybe in his head that's pissed him off. But yeah, it's sad to see crash, crash, crash. Also disappointing, Keelin. Really, really frustrating to see. I'm not annoyed at him because it's nothing to do with me, but Franco Morbidelli is all over the place at the moment. And it's actually really, really daft considering how incredibly fast his teammate was over the weekend. Fabio Gian Antonio made him look stupid. Dare I say it. Franco is his second home race, and I expected a lot more from him, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, but this has been the Franco Morbidelli story for the past 3 or 4 years. He is the most Jekyll and Hyde rider in the MotoGP paddock. And it's not even from weekend to weekend, it's from session to session. One session, Franco Morbidelli can look like a world champion, and the next session, he's causing chaos and crashing into people. There's no in between with him at all. And the worst bit is there's absolutely no consistency whatsoever. And what's so weird is, like you just said, he got embarrassed by Fabio Di Giannantonio. And to tell you the truth, he's been really badly shown up, since his time at the VR 46 for the most part. And to me, it's a shame because, again, I'm a big Franco Morbidelli fan. I think he's a great rider and he's got great pace. But the inconsistency is baffling beyond belief to me. I just do not get it one bit. Because, like I said, one session he can be brilliant, and the next session he looks like he just landed from the junior championships on a MotoGP bike and he's never ridden it before. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, he's such a chill, cool dude. Sometimes I just think, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be on Planet Zap again this weekend. Yeah, it's not really on, considering when you look at his experience, the bike he's on, the team around him, Moto2 world champion. He fought for a title. He's got race winning caliber talent. It's a shame he's been given chance after chance. He managed to stay at Yamaha for probably a season too long because his contract was so watertight through a certain academy boss he has. This one is again. I think I cannot see how it's justifiable to not have him be replaced next year by Fermin Aldeguer. There's rumours that Grassini wanting a Moto2 rider, right? This was through TNT Sports. This isn't made up. You can hear it through TNT Sports over the weekend, and that's another conversation with who that might be. But it would push out Aldeguer to VR46. Now, who are they going to replace? Well, right now you'd look stupid if you replace Fabio Di Giannantonio. You really would look ridiculous. And maybe Fabio Di Giannantonio knows that one of you guys won't be here next year because we have to make space. So he's maybe got the hurry up. But Franco has had more than enough opportunities in MotoGP, and it's time to start performing. It really is. We've seen it now. We've seen performance upgrades for Raul Fernandez. Look at him. He's finally doing what he should have done. And he, again, top 10 again. So brilliant. I think Franco has got more than enough talent to do the same thing. Maybe, I mean, he's always chill. Maybe it's not a sports psychologist he needs, but sometimes you think, what does he need? Because it's not the equipment that's wrong, is it really? I mean, would he, sometimes when he's that chill and that lackadaisical in Pete Ryder's ways and sessions, even if he was an Aprilia, current Aprilia, which is looking like the best bike, do you think he'd still be the same?
Yeah, I think he would because
Yeah.
I just think if you look at his personality, Franco Morbidelli is like if the Big Lebowski was a MotoGP rider. That's just who he is. You know, personality doesn't change with the equipment that you use. You are who you are. But the problem with Franco Morbidelli, and I don't know if he realizes this or not, he is sleepwalking his way out of MotoGP because on the balance of performances, he doesn't deserve to be in MotoGP anymore, and that is just a cold hard fact. There's
Yeah.
riders around him who are performing better than him. His own teammate is comprehensively beating him, and you sort of just have to wonder. I think, to be honest, Franco Morbidelli needs a massive boot up his backside because letting him continue to be chilled out and relaxed is not working. It's not helping him. And, you know, I mean, there are other, when you look at what he's done on track and the incidents he's been involved in, there are other riders who would have been out of the championship for less than the stuff he's got away with. I just think he is rapidly running out of road in MotoGP, and he needs to start getting it together because, like you said, bringing up Fermin Aldeguer, Fermin could be going to VR46, and they are not letting Digi go because it would just be absolute stupidity if they let Digi go.
Yeah.
That means you're the man in the hot seat, and you've got to give them a decision to make because if not, you're gone.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if Valet is obviously the team owner. I wonder if he'll have to say, or if he remain loyal to Franco. I don't know if they'll have a choice because if they are if they are going to be I mean, Grassini might agree to Honda next year. So I think I don't know if you've heard, folks, but Grassini are linked to Honda next year. But we'll talk about that another time. Um, but that would mean that there's only 4 Ducatis. Can you believe that? And then VR46 would be the factory supported satellite team. So Ducati would probably have a say on the riders, and they're not going to just let Fermin Aldeguer leave. Someone
No.
who's won a race, won a sprint, and someone who can potentially be as good as Pedro Acosta, if not on the same, yeah, maybe better sometime. You know, Craig, I've just realised Aldeguer and Acosta will be on the same type of bike next year.
How good of a thought is that?
I know. I love riders who hate each other.
Yeah, so do I.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So yeah, I think with that said, Ducati probably will have a say. Listen, we are placing him in here. I don't know. Valentino's got a lot of power still, but I'm not sure if he can change their mind there. And frankly, if it means results, I think the VR46 logos and sponsors will be shown more anyway. So Anyway, we'll see how that happens. But I mean, Franco might end up doing a P4, P3 in Kota and then go back. He's a bit erratic, so we'll see how he fares. I have a bit of a note here, folks. I should have probably had it earlier on. We're going back really to a bit of Aprilia stuff, Keelin. Apologies. Jorge Martin, he's now second in the championship. He's like 11 points behind Bez. He's got nothing to lose at all, right? And he's leaving the end of the year. He's probably thinking, I can do this. I can be world champion again. Do you think, well, as an athlete, maybe people think, no, Bez has probably got the measure of you. But as an athlete, he'll be saying, why not? Why not? I was catching him in places. If I'd have got a better start, if I improve my qualifying, if I can be world champion. In his head, he's going to be thinking, I can win races now. Because after that weekend, you would be telling yourself as an elite athlete, I can do that. Surely.
Let me tell you folks exactly what this is like, and I'm not sure if you follow this or not, but this is the direct parallel that I compare this to. If you remember the Formula One World Championship last year with McLaren's two number one drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, that is who Aprilia are. Aprilia are McLaren, and Bezzecchi and Martin are Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. You have got two number one riders on the best bike who could both go and fight each other for the championship. You have Marc Marquez, who's Max Verstappen in the Red Bull car, who could be there to pick up the pieces if they both screw each other up. The parallel is almost strikingly like just right there. But to answer your question, in terms of mindset and nothing to lose as well as overall ability, Jorge Martin could absolutely go and win this championship. There's nothing to stop him from doing it unless Massimo Rivola says, listen, we are putting all our weight behind Marco Bezzecchi and you fall in line. But if Aprilia let them go out and just let them race, Martin will absolutely be thinking, I could just go out and win this championship and shock everybody for a second time. But whether he will or not, I don't know. But based on how he did in Brazil, I mean, he was absolutely incredible in Brazil. Two podiums, a sprint podium and a race podium. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, and he was definitely the second best rider, only behind his teammates. So who's to say?
Yeah, I don't see why any reason why he will be thinking that. And he's only going to get stronger on a bike that he's only done a season and a quarter with.
Yeah,
So I think that's quite exciting. I really, really do. Because that's someone else that's a headache for Mark,
it
frankly.
is.
Clearly, folks. So watch out for Jorge Martin. I think that's really, really exciting. Right, let's get to it. The state of the track. Now, the track, I almost feel a bit daft, but there's no way someone like me would have known this. It looked brilliant. It looked finished. Okay, about a week before the race, or Monday or Sunday night, I reposted on Instagram a video, like an aerial shot from a drone or a helicopter, and just drone, and saying, "You guys thought this track wouldn't be ready." I mean, I didn't know the quality of the asphalt they were laying, or the volume of rain they were about to have on the coming days before before the race started. So it was the end of raining season. So the ground was completely saturated to the point where the rain's popping up from underneath the asphalt, the tarmac, whatever. And you've got weepers, which I haven't seen for a long time. Maybe a ref I've seen before, but nowhere near as bad as this. And just when you think, okay, Friday's out the way, the rain's pretty much gone now. We start to see rumors about a sinkhole. Oh, it's not rumor; it's actually there. You see pictures on social media, and obviously living in this new era of AI, you're like, right, okay, is that real? Is that real? Because people were saying the flood pictures on Thursday were AI. I was questioning it. There's a really, really well respected Spanish journalist. I beg your pardon, I have forgotten your name, that took that picture. That was real. So we knew there was flood risk. They trained that in half an hour, right? But obviously there was still water coming up from the actual tarmac. Keelin, this is actually quite embarrassing. It does feel like the layout's fine. You've done all that, but there was just, people were saying at the end, oh, actually, we might be too hard on them. Maybe they just got the wrong calendar slot. Maybe this should be a bit further into the year when the raining season is long gone. But given the fact that we saw permanent journalists like Sam Patterson picking up actual degraded asphalt pieces of tarmac in his hands, and then riders showing bruises, That's why the race was actually reduced to 23 laps, because obviously after the Moto2, they could see the track was actually coming to pieces. Where did we start with this? And are they going to have to spend millions on resurfacing next year? I think they might have to. What were your first thoughts and what are your current thoughts?
So, in order to kind of document my thoughts on this, we kind of have to go back to the beginning and sort of work our way through this. I'll make this as quick as I can. You'll remember, folks, in our season preview episode, we talked about the track and we talked specifically about Goiania and our excitement about going back because obviously everybody's excited. And to your credit, Jim, you pointed out your concerns that the track wasn't going to be fully finished by the time the race actually came around. You know, to be fair, they've done a very, very good job of the presentation. The track looks really nice. You know, it's great seeing all the
Yeah.
fans there. That's all well and good. Then a massive thunderstorm lands on sort of Sunday night, Monday morning. Okay, nobody's God. They can't control the weather. That's fair enough. But the problem is, even with the rain and all things being considered, the quality of the workmanship is absolutely it is horrifyingly bad. It looks like I'm from the north of Ireland, folks. You want to see our roads. Our roads look better than the crap that was on that track at the weekend, and it should never be that bad. That was absolutely horrendous. The fact that a MotoGP, an FIM homologated racetrack, is falling to pieces. Sinkholes are developing on the straight of a track. I don't need to spell out how dangerous this is and how
Mm.
bad this is.
Well, yeah. I mean, thankfully that got spotted before the next session, didn't it? And obviously that's when we got loads of delays, obviously. Never
Yeah,
seen
I
that
mean,
before. Never even seen that on a domestic superbikes touring car series. Never seen that before. Never seen that in banger racing. Not that I watch banger racing, but I've never seen it. Let alone at arguably the most premier championship in the world of motorsport after Formula One. I mean, or equal to Formula One. It is insane. Yes, you could argue Formula One's had some weird things, embarrassing things happen to the sport. Over the past 5 years. But I think some of it you can blame on weather.
Las Vegas circuit.
Yeah, that happened as well. I think it was yeah, I remember it was the manhole covers or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you've had other things that have happened, like ultra short races, and then awarding points. So probably one's had their fair share here and there. Now you mention it, it's annoying because I think a lot of the Brazilians are a bit embarrassed of seeing comments on social media and then accusing people who work in the paddock of spreading fake news. That's silly.
Yeah.
Because fans and people with cameras are going to talk. People working the sport are going to talk. They're going to broadcast what they think and broadcast common sense. Um, it's not good for the sport to do this. And the FIM and I think the Liberty, obviously something to do with Liberty, by the way. Get to that. I've got something to say in a bit. I made a point.
Yeah.
But race direction and the safety commission and IRSA will be Liberty will have conversations probably with the track about this is not being good enough. This cannot happen again. I think they'll have a representative there with meetings when they next have to negotiate. Well, I have got a contract for next year, but there's going to have to be more in-depth, detailed visits from the safety commission with Loris Caprossi and whoever else, because they were visiting the track up to the event, Keelin, within like a
I
month
know.
and that. So, but I don't think they knew that the tarmac would start degrading. You can, to a degree, excuse the constant rain coming up. If that would have been it after Friday, I don't think we'd be having this conversation as much right now. I think it's the fact that on Sunday the track started degrading and we had the sinkhole. You know, I think if it was just the saturation from the ground, okay, fair enough, guys. We gave you a slot at the end of March, at the end of your rating season. How bad? But obviously, there's been some shoddy work going on and maybe some extra cheap labor with cheap equipment, cheap tarmac, cheap. I don't know what the ingredients is, folks. That's not my line of work.
Yeah.
But I did hear TNT saying that there was some prisoners doing some of the labor.
Oh,
TNT was
Jesus
saying that.
Christ.
Um, and they thought it was a bit of a surreal experience to witness that or hear about it. I couldn't believe it myself. So we had a bit of Shawshank Redemption on Goiania circuit as well.
Oh
Um,
my God.
so yeah, they made it look good, but they need some work on it. The fans, honestly, I know if there's Brazilians listen, We've had a few in the past. This is no reflection on the fans because you could hear the fans when Mark overtook someone and other overtakes were happening. And honestly, and the reception the Brazilian rider Diogo Moreira got, and obviously excuse me, the reception that Diogo got and Franco got were brilliant. I love that. And the layout, it's not the layout's problem. The layout is brilliant. The layout was as fast and as fun as we were saying it would be. That turn one and turn two, that kink was so cool to see. I mean, it's just a shame that the execution of the whole revamp wasn't as good as it should have been. And it can still come back. It will come back next year anyway, but they can still bring it back from this. Next year, it just needs to be. They're probably going to have to spend millions on a thorough resurface and drainage. Goodness knows other things. But I don't know about you, but I like the layout. I thought the layout was cool. I liked that last sector as well. I thought it invited overtakes going into the last corner, and then there's chance of a slipstream to the line. That happened as we thought it might. We said it, didn't we? But yeah, I like the layout. It's a shame that we had 31 laps. That was quite annoying. That we only got 23 in the end. What were your thoughts on that without knowing, Keelin? Were you like, this is embarrassing, or were you like, okay, yeah, if it is a safety thing that we don't know about, let's just settle with it? Because what do you think?
Yeah, I thought the whole thing was an absolute calamity going back to the Saturday. I mean, to be clear, the sprint race should have been, if it was me and I was in charge of the safety commission, the sprint race would not have happened. And I'm sorry, I know that's unpopular. I totally get all of that. But you have to protect the rider's safety. This sport is dangerous enough as it is without an absentee track playing a part in it. It's not good enough and it's not on. I don't care what anybody says. Safety comes ahead of everything. I'll
Yeah,
never compromise on that. And then
yeah,
I'm glad you brought this up because this was going to be my next point after ranting about the state of the track itself. That that cutting down of I mean, I think 31 laps was too long anyway. That's a different discussion. I think it's too many laps for Goiania, but cutting it down 30 minutes before the race start, cutting it 8 laps down to 23 from 31 is such poor management. It's absolutely unbelievably poor. And I know Pablo Nieto from the VR46 team was talking about this. And he said, if you're going to cut this down 30 minutes before the race, you can't do this to us because we've game planned for 31 laps. And now we have to change up the game plan
yeah,
entirely because
yeah,
you've done this at
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
last minute. Now, I take people's point. It affected everybody equally. That's a fair argument. But it doesn't take away from the wider point that this has to be planned a lot better. Has to
Yeah,
be this
yeah.
this isn't some rinky dink local championship. This is the MotoGP World Championship. It doesn't get bigger than this. This is the pinnacle of motorcycle racing on the planet. And you're cutting race length 30 minutes before the race starts. You
Yeah,
can't
you can't
do
do that.
that. You
No.
can't do it.
No, you can't. And tire choices were affected. Obviously, if they knew in advance, they'd probably change the fuel load as well, things like that. Because you wouldn't have. Yeah. I disagree to a degree about the laps. I think 31 laps would have still been the same amount of time as a normal race. Don't forget, it's a shorter
Mm,
track. But riders don't really think in time; they think in laps, don't they?
yeah.
That's maybe why I would agree with you. That's me defending you. But at the same time, no, I'd be pissed off as a fan. I was sat with my dad and my girlfriend, and I was thinking, no, actually, I'd be annoyed as a fan. Finding out 4 minutes before the race starts, I'm going to see them 23 times go past, not 31. Imagine if you only bought a race day ticket, folks, and you only got there you missed Moto3 or something, caught Moto2, and oh yeah, your MotoGP race is 23 laps, not 31. Like, what?
Well,
No.
that I agree with. If and
Do you know
to
what I
be
mean? No,
clear,
that's not fair.
yeah, no, and to be clear, this is not a reflection on the Brazilian fans. They're some of the best in the world, and they're the reason this weekend was as good as it was. The atmosphere was second to none. But if I was a Brazilian fan going to the track for that day to make a day of it or whatever, the level to which I would feel shortchanged is unbelievable. I think it's
Yeah,
so unfair on them as
yeah.
well. Nothing right was considered with this at all. I just don't think they put any thought into it whatsoever.
So moving on to Moto2. Now, I really look forward to this because this year I think it's like I said before, it's the strongest grid we've had for a while. And even though we lost to Diogo Moreira, I thought this is the strongest grid ever. And then we went to a brand new track. Oh, this is gonna be excellent. Thing is, we still saw the four-man in form, Daniel Holgado, who arguably would have gone on to win the Thailand Grand Prix if it wasn't restarted twice. But yeah, brilliant performance from him. I was really impressed as well by Eskrige. And it's a shame that he didn't get his podium. Fair play to Manny Gonzalez. He knew that after not the perfect weekends, he needed to bring home a P3. I've got a friend here now, folks. Just relax, will you? Just relax. No. Yeah, I was really impressed with this. We were talking about Screech, weren't we, just before the season started? Like, will he actually get decent results or just shine in qualifying, shine in practice? And he made it work. He did look like he was sliding more than ever towards the end of the race. Thought that he couldn't even lean properly into the corners. I think I remember, is it Hodgie saying that, or was it Michael Laverty? I thought, oh god, I can see that now. So I'm glad he brought it to the finish. So yeah, hats off to Eskrige because I think he's a rider that gets overlooked a lot, and that team, that forward team, really needed a P4. So brilliant, really happy for that team. But we need to talk about Munoz. Daniel Munoz, who obviously did have a few standing rides last year, Keelin. I think we can see more of this, can't we? Because if he was already that good in his standing rides, and now he's riding for Italtrans, what are you expecting of him? I mean, do you think that was a one-off, or do you think we'll see more and more of this?
Well, I'm really hoping it wasn't a one-off because for all of his interesting antics in Moto3 a few years ago, David Munoz is an incredibly talented rider, and Sunday proved that in spades. He has always been this good. It's just he's a little bit like Franco Morbidelli. He has all the talent in God's earth, but sometimes he just completely loses his head and forgets where he is. But this Sunday he was absolutely brilliant, and like you said, with that Italtrans team, this could be more of a regular occurrence if he can put it all together and more
Yeah.
importantly keep it there. But David Munoz is a brilliant rider, and that should not
Yeah.
be overlooked. And he's always been
No,
that
no, no.
good. This is out of thin air that he's managed to conjure this. David Munoz has always been that good. I hope he can keep it together for the foreseeable because he's a bloody talented rider.
Yeah. I think he's got the team around him to help sustain that, though, Keelan. I think some teams might not have the experience to do that. But as soon as he got to P2, he stayed there. And he did not really let Danny Holgado go, frankly. In fact, at times the gap was just a stalemate, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So yeah, but I think he was in another league was Holgado to a degree. I think he had it in hand, frankly. And he was controlling the gap, just like Marco Bezzecchi was. I will say I was impressed with the likes of Guevara again, not going backwards to P15 or something like that, like he had before. So I'm pleased that Guevara had a steady race for his championship. And Colin Vaya, solid P8. I think I did predict that he'd do better than that. Doesn't matter. He's still there. He's still top 10. So yeah, fair play to him. Rookie Angel Vaqueras crashed. Not a good weekend again, but in time. In time, we'll see. He's got years until he gets to the point of how far it took Guevara to get good. So Vaqueras has got time yet. Ferrasato's having a tough time, isn't he? Arguably one of the toughest, strongest, most aggressive riders Moto3 had. Eventually, after a couple of years of getting good, he's struggling. Or do you think that's just rookie stuff again, like Vaqueras for Ferrasato? Because I hope this isn't going to continue because I don't want him to be one of these riders that disappears into Moto2 oblivion.
yeah, yeah. I think with Tayo Sato, I think it is a touch of sort of rookie jitters that we have seen with the likes of Izan Guevara
Yeah.
and others in the past. And I hope it's just a blip because again, Sato's a crazily talented rider, and he has all the potential excuse me, is all the potential to be riding it in like top five, top six in the grid. What you don't want, as you rightly said, is for him to become like a Tetsuta Nagashima from a few years ago, where he's one of the best riders in the grid, and then he just falls into this black hole in Moto 2 where he just doesn't do anything and eventually falls out of the championship entirely. That would be gutting if that happened because Sato is a very, very good rider. And if he can get over this hump, he could be very, very competitive in this championship.
Yeah, I think it could take a whole season,
It
frankly.
could take 2 seasons.
It might take two because, I mean, it's taken this long for Mario Aggi to get this quick. But then again, you could argue that Mario Aggi it hasn't maybe got as natural the natural talent that Sato has.
I think that's a fair argument.
Yeah, Mario Aggi, I think, was promoted to begin with because there was an open spot in Moto2 team that team obviously was going to take on Asian riders, so that's why he was promoted. But he didn't do too badly. P13 qualified quite well. Yeah. Senna just did finish P19. I predicted that he would do very well this weekend. That's what happened with those predictions. We were sort of laughing at ourselves, weren't we? So yeah, let's
Yeah.
just not talk about that prediction. Moving on from that, Moto3. Now that was a really happy time. I'll start again. Moving on to Moto3. Really, really happy. First and foremost for the Aspar team. Right, okay. You're gonna go in crate in a second. Just a sec. We're nearly done as well. Keelin is delivering on what we expected him this year, frankly. The favourite, arguably, for everyone who follows the sport in depth. Or anyone with eyes and brains. Keelin was always going to do well. I think Morelli was the one who surprised everyone the most in his first full year. Really challenging Keelin. And we thought we were going to get an Aspar showdown for the win there. And that Keelin had it under control. But that was a great race. Great race. What were your thoughts on Veda Pratama? I mean, I know I was a bit outlandish last week and predicted he'd win the race, but truthfully, I think with outlandish predictions aside, him getting P3, the first ever Indonesian podium, I might add, I was so happy for him. I'm so happy for the sport, so happy for the team. Second race, man. I mean, it took Tayo a while to get podium. This is brilliant, and this is really promising in more ways than one.
Yeah, first of all, obviously, shout out Max Keeles and Marco Morelli. That Aspar team have it going at the moment, two of the best
Yeah.
riders on the grid, and they put up an incredible race between the two of them. But Veda Pratama, where did this kid come from? He's an absolute revelation for Moto3. And I think what it does, as well as anything, is it really validates and vindicates the Honda Team Asia setup and approach within the World Championship because this kid is a star in the making, and not just because he's friendly and all this different stuff, which by all accounts he is, but he's a bloody brilliant rider, really really good racer, and he's clean but he's sharp. You know those riders that are just
He's aggressive when he needs to be, isn't he?
He's aggressive, but in a very smooth way, which I know won't make sense to a lot of people. But he's clean with it, he's precise with it, he's ruthless with it, and it's not often you see that sort of complete package from a rider so young. And Indonesia getting its first ever Moto3 podium. I mean, does it get any better than that? I don't think it does. It's absolutely brilliant, and I'm so happy for that team. And I'm thrilled for Veda Pratama because he could be a real star of the future. I could see him doing very well in Moto2, for example. I could see him making that transition seamlessly and being just as good there. And he's only 2 races into his Grand Prix career, for the love of God. But shout out to him. He was absolutely unreal.
I know. Do you know what? That's a really good point. I wasn't going to go down that route, but you have. If he has a really good season, if he keeps it up, yes, he's a rookie, so he's going to have off races like any rookie would. Um, but given the fact that he isn't a short guy, Vader. He's a fairly tall gent. So given that, I think that there's every chance that he could replace Mario Aggi next year in the Honda Team Motorsport in Moto2.
Yeah.
And then you could have fast tracking. We'll have to see that. But I think we're going to see. I think he could win a race quite easily this year. He could
Oh
quite easily
yeah,
win a race this rookie
absolutely.
year. But he's got that. He's got that aggressive swag about him as well. He's very friendly. He speaks good English as well, folks. Now, people think, well, why are you bothered about that? Well, because the sport needs to grow, and a lot of riders, frankly, listening to them do need to turn. And Liberty, I don't know if they're going to have a word about it. There's not enough good English speakers, considering in terms of mainstream exposure, right? That's what I mean by it. I'm not, obviously, yes, I don't speak fluent Spanish at all, or Italian, or Portuguese, or Japanese. I think the likes of Casey Gorman are likely to score podiums this year as well, all being well. He does have a tendency to hold on to the front group without really any struggles, which is really refreshing. He just doesn't seem to have any issues. He's not set himself to the moon crashing. Well, actually, I think he did actually have a little crash over the weekend, but he was fine and he carried on. And again, not a bad weekend. Do we think that he's going to be on the podium anytime soon? Is that optimistic? or there's nothing wrong with being optimistic. There's realistic as well.
I certainly hope so for pretty much every reason you can think of. I mean, the pride I feel at watching someone like Casey O'Gorman do his thing is almost immeasurable. I mean, to get a top 10 at a brand new track from a
Mhm.
country that has even less sort of rider support than the UK does, little old Ireland of all places. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm so proud of Casey O'Gorman, riding for a brilliant team like the Siege 58 squad, getting a top 10 in the second race of the season. I think he could absolutely podium this year. I really, really think he could.
Yeah.
And I think he's got the talent to do it. I think he's got the machinery to do it. And I think he has the maturity to put the two together and do it. So I certainly don't think it's a ridiculous prediction at all. And I think it's something that's well within his reach.
Yeah.
And I just have the belief that one day I will hear Alvaro Naveen on the podium of a world championship podium. I think it would be just the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. And Casey O'Gorman could be the one to do it. I have every confidence in him.
Yeah. No, I do as well. He's got that. He's got the right mentality. He's got good head on his shoulders. This Casey.
Yeah.
He's good with the media. He's just good news in general. Um, so we'll have to see there. I think also I need to give a shout out to Rico Salmela, who had a really good showing this weekend. Again, we're drenched in talent from these junior categories in the World Championship this year, more so than I can ever remember. Honestly, um, again, Casey, Rico, Vader, all like perfect examples of this. But he was really sending it. Was Rico, another great racing name, Rico Salmela. Casey O'Gorman, Tayo Furusato. Great names. Anyway, moving on from that, yeah, I think watch out for him because he's got a good squad with him, the Tech 3 squad. And I think I love it when someone who's, well, depending, he's only had a couple of races, but when someone's tasted the front of the group, oh, this is what it's like here. Sometimes they're there again and again and again. And it's like, okay, they're now permanently a front runner. I love it when that happens because they learn a lot just in one race, way more than they ever would in a practice session or a qualifying session. So I think the likes of Rico, it'll do him a world of good. That's the same with Casey, obviously, same more or less the same group. Um, Casey was maybe just playing it more safe, just behind because those Red Bull KTM's, all four of them, were bashing each other sideways. To be fair, but it was good to see. But tell you what, we haven't mentioned some of the crazy high sides that we
Oh,
saw in the Moto3 race was sickening, like really sickening. And then we got a red flag, didn't we, as well? And I was really worried that it was for Scott Ogden because he just crashed just before it happened. Um, so yeah, I'm happy no one was seriously hurt this weekend because when people crashed, they went to the moon.
yeah.
Um, like really bad. So yeah, I'm
Did you
just
see
happy.
Cormac
That was the one.
Buchanan's high
Buchanan's
side?
was sickening, wasn't it?
Oh,
He did the loop twice. It just him,
yeah.
let alone the bike. Yeah, I mean, the highlight reels would have loved that, and people who love to search that would have had a field day. But yeah, to see him 2 minutes later walking away was quite good to see. We've got a lodger here, and she was watching Moto3 for the first time ever, watching a race for the first time with us, and she was a bit well, not shell shocked by it, but she couldn't believe it. He was walking away. I was like, "Yep, that's an airbag system." But yeah, on a serious note, it's not really funny. You do see high sides, of course you do over the weekend. You don't tend to see that many high sides from Moto3 though. So again, that could be the track surface. Not sure because that was turn 3 that was happening mostly. And most of the degradation we saw at the end of the day was happening in 9, 10, 11, I believe, turns wise. And the Aspar team showing why they are still the best. I mean, IO squad have done well in recent years, but the Aspar team, I still think it's one of the best outfits to ride for. And no wonder, I mean, all respect to the MLab team. And I know I think Morelli was supposed to be riding for them this year, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But if you do get an offer from the Aspar squad,
You're not saying no to that. You just
you're not
aren't.
saying no. You're not. You're not. So no, you'd be a bit of you'd regret that for a long time, unless you were that good. It didn't matter what team you rode for. Fair play. But yeah, I just want to also say before we wrap up and maybe do a little bit of Austin predictions because we haven't really thought about it. And truthfully, I want to make something really clear that a lot of listeners or people in general think that Liberty make every decision under the sun with MotoGP, and it's actually really it's becoming a bit of a pet hate of mine. Keelan, you can maybe shine some light on this in case I'm missing something here. Every little thing that happens in MotoGP, there's a decision I mean, Phillip Island obviously was an obvious one, or stuff like race direction, safety concerns, all of these things, rules with manufacturers and things like this. You can only have this, you can only have that. Move this here, move this on that track. It's not all Liberty, guys. There is a safety commission for these things. There is the FIM, race direction, the MSMA for the manufacturers handle things like those other things. Yeah. You've got IRTA as well. Like Liberty are the commercial rights holders, guys. They sort out the exposure of the sport, the television stuff. They don't make every rule. Okay, you don't say Formula One management when you're talking about Formula One, do you? You say FIA. It's the same with MotoGP. Liberty don't make rules for safety, guys. It's nothing to do with them. They might have a Dorna/Liberty representative in a meeting or something massive like that. Keelan, can you shine any more light on that? Unless I've made too broad a stroke there.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I am glad you've brought this up. It's unfortunate that it's taken an event like this to bring it up, but it's worth bringing up while the monkey's at the sugar, as they say. The thing with Dorna is, and this isn't just from this past weekend, this has been happening for a number of years now. Dorna gets a lot of unfair flack when it comes to MotoGP, and I know they're an easy target and people like to criticize them for a lot of things. But like you've just said, Dorna is not responsible for every single decision that's made within the world of MotoGP. Dorna is the commercial rights holder of the championship. They
Yeah,
market it, they product it, they put the TV cameras there, they basically run the show. But the rules and the way and safety concerns and things like that, that's the Safety Commission, that's the FIA, that's their realm of things.
yeah,
Now, yes, Dorna, to my knowledge, has a representative in those things, but they're not running the show in that area. They run the show with management, with circuits, which with managing the championship, with managing sponsorship, with managing relationships with the teams in the championship. That's all Dorna. But when it comes to things like this past weekend, that's the responsibility of the Safety Commission and that's the responsibility of the FIA. And both of those bodies let the riders down really, really badly at the weekend.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
for fans of a certain age, you will know who Loris Capirossi is. Loris Capirossi is the safety officer for the Safety Commission, I think, as far as I'm aware. Basically, to put this all very simply, Loris Capirossi went out to check that track and he gives the pass or the failure on whether the sprint race goes ahead and whether the main race goes ahead. Now, I don't know what Loris Capirossi saw when he inspected the track, but he said it was safe to race on, even though they had just covered a literal manhole on the track. So I basically say all that to say this. Dorna gets a lot of crap for a lot of different things. And yes, they haven't been the best at marketing the sport outside of Europe, and there's a lot of stuff they could do better. I'm not going to argue with you on that. But where Dorna are somewhat exempt from criticism is when it comes to incompetency about the safety. That's down to IRTA, that's down to the Safety Commission, that's down to the FIA. They all could have stopped that on Saturday and Sunday, and they chose not to. They chose to go ahead with the race for obvious reasons because people were there and because a lot of money has been put into this. That was the driving concern behind what happened on Saturday and Sunday, and it should not have been.
yeah,
But at the same time, two things can be true at the same time. That all can be true, but it's not Dorna's fault either. Their job is to basically keep the thing going and essentially manage the process. They don't make the decision on whether it goes ahead or not. That's the Safety Commission, that's the FIA. They should have pulled the plug and they didn't.
yeah,
And that's where
yeah,
they fall
yeah,
short. That you should be blaming them for that. Don't blame Dorna. Dorna's not at fault with this incident. Blame the FIA, blame the Safety Commission because they
mm,
screwed up.
yeah. I'm guessing. I mean, obviously, these representatives from Dorna/Liberty will be liaising with the race direction and safety commission quite often, folks. And sometimes I wonder how often the passing the buck happens. Oh, well, that's your department. Well, that's your department. I mean,
It's
does sometimes go on
bureaucracy.
and saying, well, this race needs to happen. I mean, that will be Dawn of Liberty. That will be like, no, this race has to happen, guys. We have tens of millions of people watching. We can't just reduce it to this. And the safety commissioner probably have it written down somewhere that yes, we can. This is a safety concern. You've got a crumbling tarmac on the outside, on 10 and 11, turns 9, 10, 11. Yes, we can do it. And we're going to do it right now. So I reckon they have got power to override if it's keeping riders safe, which I get. I completely get it.
Yeah,
But for goodness sake, if it was doing that, and there is pictures, folks, there is pictures of it already happening after the Moto2 race. So they could have made that decision an awful lot earlier, and then fuel loads and tyre choices could have been made more accurately. And then
yeah,
obviously what you'd have happen then is the MotoGP bikes leaving pit lane to form the grid, but they'll then go through the pit lane and keep doing out laps. Keep doing
yeah,
out laps. If you didn't know, folks, there's the out lap to the grid, then the warm up lap, as you all know. But you can go leave the pit lane before the MotoGP race starts. And instead of forming the grid, you can go through the pit lane and do the whole thing again, just to balance a few things. It's almost like a cheat code, if you will, they've always allowed, just to make sure everything's running fine. They can't push on these out laps, but they can see if everything's working okay. And
yeah.
once that's fine, then they form the grid. And obviously, when everyone's together, then they do the warm up lap as normal. Um, I can't believe they didn't make this decision after the Moto2 and before
Yeah.
the out laps were happening.
I have to say as well, just whilst we're on this topic, I'm very disappointed in some of the team managers and team principals not putting a stop to this either, because they could have done that as well. They could have said, listen, again, I'm just picking a very random example. I'm not saying anybody in particular is at fault. Massimo Rivola could have said, right, Bezzecchi, Martin, get back into the pits. We're not taking part in this. It's too dangerous to go out and risk it. Davide Tardozzi or Gigi Dall'Igna could have said, right, Mark and Pecco, get back in here. We're not doing this. The track is not safe enough to race. What you have to remember with motorsport, and MotoGP has a very big history with this, but so does F1. F1 has had people like Sir Jackie Stewart, Nicky Lauda, Luca de Montezemolo, people who are willing to speak up and say, listen, this is wrong. We should not be out risking it. These conditions are too dangerous. People in MotoGP who have influence in the paddock, the Gino Borsois, the Pablo Nietos, the people who actually run these shows, Davide Brevio, they have to be willing to speak up and put a stop to this when it has to be done, because it's all well and good us sort of proselytizing about this and sort of preaching about this, but we have no influence. I mean, it doesn't matter what we say. We're not going to change whether a race goes ahead or not. The people who actually have influence in the paddock have to start using it for the right reasons as well. If it's clearly not safe to be racing, whether it's weather, whether it's the track like on Saturday or Sunday, do the right thing by your riders. Keep your riders safe. Say, listen, yes, it's a championship and yes, we have to compete, but it's too dangerous. I mean, what happens if a MotoGP bike hits that manhole? What is the end result of that?
Mm,
Does it take someone to get hospitalized for someone to say, do you know what, actually we're going to pull the plug and not compete in this?
mm.
I mean, Marc Marquez, maybe the most famous rider from the MotoGP paddock, he was quoted. I can't remember who got the quote, but someone got the quote. He said on Sunday after the race that it felt like the asphalt was shifting underneath him as he was racing, and that it was like racing on gravel. And that's Marc Marquez saying that. That's the biggest rider
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
championship saying
And
that.
Mark doesn't mince his words. Mark doesn't bullshit.
Yeah,
That's what Mark's
Mark
going for.
doesn't bullshit. Like you said, Mark doesn't waste his time with words. But the point that I am making, people, is this: the people who make this whole thing run, the people with influence, IRTA, the team principals, the team bosses, you have to be willing to stand up and do the right thing from time to time, even if it's the unpopular thing, because this sport is dangerous enough as it is. I don't need to remind you of that and the riders we've lost along the way. There is no need to add to it
Yeah,
unnecessarily. And
added
that's
danger.
what we saw at the weekend.
Yeah, added danger. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and they wanted it to happen. Yeah, I get it from a commercial point of view as well, but that was close. We didn't see that, didn't know that until after the race about the crumbling asphalt, bits coming off till after the race. So everyone was like, "Well, why are we doing this then? Why is it 23 laps?" So yeah, I mean, all I was thinking was, well, I would be pissed off as a fan. sat in the grandstands, paying a lot of money. But yeah, it was. It will. It's one of those things that I think Liberty are going to get involved, probably in making sure that these decisions are made quicker and clearer. 4 minutes before the race, changing the race distance. No, you can't do that. You can't do that to the fans. You can't do that to riders. Sorry, the riders and teams come first. But the fans are paying for it to see it. So no, that was messy, and there'll be words had from the new owners. I think, and that's when they can get involved after, because it's just how it looks on TV. Looks how it looks trackside. And you need to implement these safety decisions earlier on, because you can still make these safety decisions, which are still going to dishearten fans, but you can still do it well in advance and make it look a bit smoother. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I think the point is. That's the happy balance, isn't it?
No, I was just going to say one last point on this because I know I've kind of ranted about it enough already.
All right, sorry.
The last point that I want to make about this as well is the media and the people on site covering this. Now, obviously, I watched TNT's coverage because of where I'm from in the world, and to be fair to the likes of Susie Perry and Neil Hodgson and Sylvain Gintoli, they were left hanging as well. They weren't told what was happening. They were basically trying to string it out and string it along as best as they could. They were left hanging out to dry as well because they had no explanation about what was
No.
going on. And the reason they had no explanation as to what was going on is because nobody could figure out what the hell needed to be done. And changing race distance 4 minutes before the main race starts is just plain unacceptable. There's no two ways around it. It is unacceptable. And poor Susie Perry had to keep apologizing because
Yeah,
she
fair
didn't
play
have
to
any.
Susie.
I mean, obviously Susie's a pro; she's the best, of course, but you can't leave them out to dry either. She was trying to keep people informed with no information. How do you do that? You can't do that to people. It was so poor, and I think I mean, I'm sure Service and all the other sort of broadcasts from the European broadcasters, they all did a brilliant job too. But TNT did a great job with what they were working with because it was very poorly managed.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in for that, folks. Thanks for listening to the reviews. Mark Win Austin. There you go. There's There's mine. But I think if Aprilia's do take a happy second and third, they're still well in the hunt going into the European season. Well, they will be anyway, because they've got a nice points lead. But what are your thoughts on Austin before we go, Keelan?
Same as everything you've just said, pretty much. I think Aprilia can absolutely round
Boring.
out the podium, but block out Austin, block out the Saxon ring for Mark, and everything else is up
Yeah.
for grabs apart from that.
Yeah, amen to that. We've run over so much, folks, that we're not going to predict any of the classes this weekend. But thanks for tuning in and listening to us rant about Goiania. Great layout, just needs some work because I'd love it to stay on the calendar because I do like the track layout. But other than that, enjoy the weekend. And it could have been better. So we look forward to seeing it again next year. They should totally learn their lessons. Keelan, thanks as always for joining.
Mate, my absolute pleasure. I wish this was a bit of a more positive episode because Brazil is brilliant. The people are amazing. The layout of the track is fantastic. But get a better contractor for next year. This crap cannot happen again. Get a better tarmacer for this because that was a nonsense. Anyway,
Yeah.
on to Austin, on to Marc Marquez's inevitable wins, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, and we'll see you next week, folks. Bye bye.